Why do we say we have a hard time breaking our habits? I've been thinking about that this week because ultimately I find habits are relatively easy to break. The real difficulty comes when you get something you want out of the habit. For instance, I brush my teeth regularly. I brush them every night before I go to bed. But just recently, I had one night I came home incredibly tired and I just went to bed. Decided not to brush my teeth. Very easy to break that habit. But other habits are a lot harder to break. And that's because the reward is much more sudden, right? The reward for brushing your teeth is you don't get cavities and your breath smells nicer and your teeth feel a little cleaner. The reward for, say, eating fast food is almost immediate, right? You get the sugar, you get the salt, you get the fat, all in your system, all things we love. All the fast food is designed to be something that you like, right? They put a ton of money into developing food that hits you in those right points that you eat it a lot and you eat a ton of it. And it's not very good for you, health-wise. There's definitely healthier options. It's not really that much faster anymore. There's still a few places that are quick, but most of the time it's a little slower than it used to be. And it's a lot pricier than it was, but people still eat it. Although, based on some of the data I've seen, a lot less than they used to. But if that's become a habit for you, it is actually not that hard to break. It's just you have to get over that dopamine hit or lack of dopamine hit from not eating it. And that goes for a lot of other habits as well. Right? Like most habits are formed because it's something you do regularly. And they're pretty easy to form, to be honest. It's the things that don't really give you a immediate reward that are harder to form into habits. And that's unfortunately a lot of the healthier choices. Soda is delicious, and that can make it harder to break that habit. But if you want to break that habit, the really easy way to break it is to not buy soda. Right? You just cut it off before it even happens. I used to drink a lot of soda, and that worked for me. I was just no longer around it, and so I didn't drink it. And I would say it was definitely a habit. I'd get up and I'd grab a soda. I'd go sit down. I was drinking probably a lot of it at one point. I was drinking a couple cans of soda a day at one point, and I just stopped it by just not ordering it. When I go to restaurants, I order water, and I just don't order soda. If I go to a sit-down restaurant, normally I just order water because normally drinks are like $3, and so it's a little cost saving there as well. But it's not like soda's the healthy option. So breaking that habit helps my health too. How you spend money can be a habit, right? Some people go shopping right when they get their paycheck or have already spent their paycheck because they have a shopping habit. Although I think some might call that an addiction. But if it is a habit and not an addiction, because I think those are two different things, and if you are addicted, you should probably seek professional help, depending on the type of addiction. If it's the more easy to break in some ways, dopamine addiction, where it's a pattern of behavior that gives you it as opposed to a substance, maybe you don't need the professional help. But if you do have a substance problem, you should seek professional help because they'll be able to help you more than some random guy on the internet. If you have some of those habits, they're pretty easy to break. The trick is to recognize the habit and figure out what it's giving you and why you want that thing, right? So like with fast food, often it's a convenience thing. It's convenient. You got to eat anyway. Maybe you don't like cooking, or you don't feel you have time to cook on that particular day, or it's just, it's a Friday, let's order a pizza sort of thing. Because that can be a habit as well. Just like, hey, every Friday we have pizza. And that's fine. It could be any of those things. And just figure out where that's occurring and why you like that. If it's because you don't like cooking, well, there are some ways around that, right? You can basically, if you cook the right way, and you would have to look into this somewhat, but you can make large batches. You could do meal prep so that you're only cooking one day a week. You can do really complicated meal prep. I've seen some people online doing that. I've seen some really simple meal prep online, right? So you just got to look for what kind of thing you're after and do that instead. And then instead of stopping off, you can go, well, I have food at home. I'll just go home and reheat it. Some of the rewards of some of these bad habits really aren't very good. The long-term health effects of eating fast food a lot definitely aren't good. And so if it is a habit, it can be useful to break. And even then, it's more expensive these days. So breaking that habit would save you some money. But there can be like little things like doom scrolling on your phone. That's not a healthy habit, and it is definitely a habit. And why do people do that? Well, it's the dopamine hit. It's the, novelty dopamine hit. And I think that's a big one. I've noticed that in myself as well, is, doom scrolling on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, even any of the shorts, any of those sorts of things. Every couple of seconds you get a new thing, right? And that's hitting that novelty part of your brain, which we're kind of wired to look for. And it's definitely not a helpful habit. And I suspect it's probably contributing to some ADHD in people, or at least ADHD-like effects, with the shortened attention spans. But it is still a bad habit, because if you find something suitably interesting, you'll do it for hours. Right? You'll see this in people who play video games, for example, right? They'll put thousands of hours into a game because the game's interesting to them. And then, like, if that's something you're like, well, I do that and I want to spend my time otherwise, but I don't find the other stuff as interesting, then that is something to look into and go like, okay, well, what do I find about this game that's keeping me coming back? Because maybe you can gamify some other part of your life that you're more interested in, at least conceptually, even if not by current action, to make that more interesting to you. Right, video games are really fun. I play them, try to play them a bit less than I used to, right? I have other things I have to do, so that's not really an option anymore. And that's not to say that video games are bad either, but there are other things I'd rather be doing that would be more beneficial to me in both the short and long term than just spending all my free time on video games. Figuring out what interests you on those games can help you find those things in other areas of your life. And some areas of your life won't be interesting, but they still need to be done. So if you can do anything that lets you take the one habit and apply it to something else where maybe you don't have to do as much work, it would be useful. But it can be pretty easy to break those habits too. And that was kind of the point of this, is the habits aren't hard to break. You just have to figure out what it is they give you and why you want that thing. And then it's relatively easy to break them, right? Like brushing your teeth, for example, a habit I hope most of you have. But there's no real immediate intrinsic reward to it. The rewards are long-term. It's less cavities. If it's better breath, it's, better feeling teeth because they don't have all the plaque on them. And then the long-term effects are, poor tooth health has been linked to heart disease. At one point, I don't know if it still is considered correct, but at one point research was indicating it's linked to certain forms of Alzheimer's. Nobody likes visiting the dentist, so if you can avoid extra visits to the dentist because your teeth don't hurt and you don't have cavities, you don't have to go in for root canals, that can be beneficial as well. But those are all long-term effects, right? They're not immediate, but I hope you do brush your teeth and have that as a good habit, because it is a beneficial one. Whereas, like, if your habit is to get up and play video games, that's not as beneficial in the long run, but it is a lot more fun. So taking that fun and applying it to something else could be useful if you can figure out how to do that. And to figure that out, you got to figure out why you like this thing so much. And I guess it goes a bit beyond habits too. It's like, if you can figure out why you enjoy this one thing, maybe you can find that elsewhere. And I definitely think that's something that's missing in our current society because of how much people are on their phones. You have this little novelty generating device in your pocket. At least pretty much everyone I know does. Maybe you're one of the few people who still has a flip phone or something, or an old school style phone instead of the smartphone. But the smartphones give you access to the internet, and that means you can look at all these shorts, all this novelty content, scroll Twitter, scroll Instagram, whatever it is. And that isn't really beneficial, but a lot of us find ourselves sinking our time into it. In decades past, you would, say, oh, somebody who just sits in front of the television and rots away is kind of wasting their life, even if, like, they might be enjoying that show or whatever it is. But now I think that's much more on the phone. And I think for a lot of people, it is a habit. Because I think they crave the novelty in other areas of their life, and they've kind of, after a certain point, you kind of train yourself to crave it, and then it becomes a habit and it becomes self-reinforcing. So if you can figure out how to get that from something else, that would be useful. I think that's where we'll end it for this week. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.